Okay, this is about as good as I get here. Let me see. There. Now I'm doing chapter 22, lesson 17, direct comparison, comparative, and cost approaches of appraisal. And we're going straight to the questions. 22, a comparable. Okay, just wait. No. Excuse me, guys. I got to go straight to what my little sheet here tells me to go to. So I'm going straight to 81. Yeah. And the other ones I ignore. 81. The principle of substitution in the comparative approach of appraisal states that, number 2, similar properties which have recently sold are comparable. So let me read that again. 81 on page 4. The principle of substitution in the comparative approach of appraisal states that, number 2, similar properties which have recently sold are comparable. 130. In the comparative approach of appraisal, one method of making final adjustments to price is to use a rating grid. In using a rating grid, it is most important that, number 3, the subject property be the basis of comparison and all comparables be adjusted to it. So the subject property is God, or we could say the sun, and all comparables revolve around the sun or the subject property. So that is for using, let me read it again, a rating grid. 130, in the comparative approach of appraisal, one method of making final adjustments is to the price, is to use a rating grid. And when you use it, the most important thing is 3, the subject property is the basis of comparison and all comparables are adjusted to. So the subject property is the standard. 131, where a single family residence in Vancouver contains a wood-burning furnace as its primary heating system, this would be considered an element of, and the answer is 2, functional curable depreciation. All right, read it again. Where a single family residence in Vancouver contains a wood burning furnace as its primary heating system, this would be considered an element. Holy fuck. Sorry, how come it worked before and it's not working now? I don't know. Sorry, I just got to get my stability working here. Okay. Okay, anyway. As long as it's leaning but not falling over, I guess we're okay. If you hear a thunk, you'll know what it is. I get a chair here in the bathroom. Anyways, so where a single family residence in Vancouver contains a wood-burning furnace as its primary heating system, this would be an element, and they consider it 131, functional curable depreciation. All right, and we're rushing up to 215. Wherever the hell 215 is. Wasn't that exciting? So 215. It's gonna, man. Anyways, always an adventure, huh? 215, I found it here on page 6. When using the cost method of appraisal, cost of improvements is normally determined by utilizing, number 1, current replacement cost. When using the cost method of appraisal, cost of improvements is normally determined by utilizing the current replacement cost. Alrighty then. And we got another one here on 253 on page 7. In applying the cost method of appraisal to the valuation of a single-family residence built in 1954, the value of improvements is determined by, and the answer is number 2, the current costs of constructing a modern equivalent of the subject property. Read it again. In applying the cost method of appraisal to the valuation of a single-family residence built in 1954, the value of improvements is determined by 2, the current costs of constructing a modern equivalent of the subject property. You got that? And then we'll go to 298 on page 8. The comparative method of appraisal is based on an analysis of recent sale prices for similar properties. Okay, comparative method. Which is the best? Which of the following best defines the word recent? And the answer is, let's see, 289, 3. 3 is a period of time during which supply and demand conditions have not changed. Right? So the comparative method of appraisal is based on what? It's based on an analysis of recent sales prices for similar properties. And the word recent here means 3, a period of time during which supply and demand conditions have not changed. A little bit difficult in a hot market where prices are increasing. 336, in using cost method of appraisal, the major difficulty is experienced in calculating 336, the incurable physical depreciation. In using the cost method of appraisal, the major difficulty is experienced in calculating 3, incurable physical depreciation. 337, you are to appraise a single attached dwelling in an ordinary neighborhood. If supply and demand factors have remained relatively stable for the last 3 months, a good comparable property is a similar property which, and the answer is 2, after 2 months exposure to the market was sold 1 week ago. So let me tell you again, you're going to appraise a single attached, not detached, but single attached dwelling in an ordinary neighborhood. If supply and demand factors have remained relatively stable for the last 3 months, a good comparable property is a similar property which, 2, after 2 months exposure to the market, was sold 1 week ago. Alrighty then. And then we are page 10, 339. Reproduction cost is best defined as 3, the current cost of constructing an exact replica of the subject property. Reproduction cost is best defined as 3, the current cost of constructing an exact replica of the subject property. 404, when using the cost method of appraisal to estimate the value of a building which currently contains urea formaldehyde foam insulation, UFFI, insulation should be considered in your calculation as number 3, both 1 and 2. 1 being part of the overall replacement cost, and 2, a deduction for depreciation. Read it again. When you're using the cost method of appraisal to appraise a building that's got urea formaldehyde, foam insulation, UFFI, insulation should be considered in your calculation as number 3, both 1 and 2. 1, part of the overall replacement costs. 2, a deduction for depreciation. 417, functional depreciation can be defined as 417. Number 1, the loss in value caused by an outmoded or inadequate design. Functional depreciation can be defined as, number 1, the loss in value caused by an outmoded or inadequate design. All right, you got that? And moving along. How you doing there? You having fun listening to this voice? The voice of reason. Are you planning to get 100% on this test? Are you planning not to chicken out? Are you planning to rule the roost? Vanquish the world? 544. Which one of the following is true where a comparable property is sold subject to a vendor-supplied mortgage at an interest rate lower than the current market rate? And the answer here for 544, is this really one of them? It's not on my list. Anyways, which of the following is true where the comparable property is sold subject to a vendor-supplied mortgage at an interest rate lower than the current market rate? And the answer is, for 544, is 4. The comparable sale price must be adjusted downward. Okay, so let's rewind a little bit. So we've got a comparable property is sold subject to a vendor-supplied mortgage at an interest rate lower than the current market rate. So that means 4, the comparable sale price must be adjusted downward because it's lower than the market. You get it? It's lower than the market. And we turn the magical page to page 16. 556. Using the comparative method of appraisal to value properties with redevelopment potential, it is not necessary that the comparables and the subject property 5563 have a market value of 0 in their current use. Read it again. Using a comparative method of appraisal to value properties with redevelopment potential, or as we could say, what is it called? Latent? Yeah, latent. Isn't that latent potential? Yeah. It is not necessary that the comparables and the subject property number 3 have a market value of 0 in their current use. 590. The appraisal of condominium units using the market comparison method has some distinct differences from the appraisal of other types of real property. Which one of the following factors might be applicable to condominiums only? And the answer for 590 is 3. And 3 is common area charges. Common area charges. Let me read it again. The appraisal of condo units using the market comparison method has some distinct differences from the appraisal of other types of real property. Which one of the following factors might be applicable to condos only? And number 3, it is common area charges. And we are going to motor right along. Hey, we got something on 17 here. Yo. 604. In the comparative approach, it is most important that the subject building and the comparable buildings, number 3, be similar with respect to factors judged important by buyers and sellers. All right, you got that? Read it again. In the comparative approach, it is most important that the subject building and comparable buildings be 3 similar with respect to factors judged important by buyers and sellers. All right? It's got to be similar in those factors. 605, if the cost of developing houses is greater than their market value, you will go bankrupt. No, what will occur in the short run? And the answer is 605. Sorry, for 605 is 3. Development will stop. You get that? If the cost of developing houses is greater than their market value, what will occur in the short run? Development will stop. 608, which one of the following is termed functional incurable depreciation in a building? And the answer is 3, narrow hallways. Functional incurable depreciation example is narrow hallways, number 3. And we shall overcome. And we're going to 18. And we're going over to 669, and 669 reads, the Consumer Price Index is a good method to adjust sales prices to the level of values prevailing as of the date of appraisal. what the fuck? Number 4, under no circumstance. So let me try to make some sense out of this shit. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, is a good method to adjust sales prices to the level of values prevailing, all right, basically the market rate. You can use the CPI, prevailing as of the date of appraisal under no circumstances. That means what? It means never use the CPI. You get it? And then we go to 670. An appraiser is using the market approach for his appraisal of a single-family house. By proper adjustment, the appraiser can use sales prices of all the following properties for comparison purposes, except, number 3, houses recently sold between related parties. Why not? Because they're related, so the prices will be skewed. Read it again. An appraiser is using the market approach for his appraisal of a single-family house. By proper adjustment, the appraiser can use sales prices of all kinds of following properties for comparison purposes, except 3 houses recently sold between related parties. You can't use those, but you can use 1, houses in different neighborhoods, 2, houses with different square footage, and 3, 4, houses sold over 6 months ago. All right, feeling like a champion already. Woo! Yes. All right, now we're motoring along to our page 20. 700, which of the following best describes curable functional depreciation? And the answer is, drumroll please, 2, an outmoded design which can be corrected easily. Which one of the following best describes curable functional depreciation? The answer is 2. An outdated design which can be easily corrected. 712. In terms of appraisal, recent means what? Recent means 2 minutes ago. Recent means, number 2, the time period during which demand and supply conditions have remained relatively stable. So if you want to say recent, it means supply and demand have not really changed much recently. 733. In the comparative method of appraisal, one method of making final adjustments to price is to use the rating grid. You remember that rating grid? It's for comparative method. In using a rating grid, it is most important that you wear your glasses if you're nearsighted, right? It is most important that you do. Number 1, the subject property be the basis of comparison, and all comparables are adjusted to it. So when you use the rating grid, remember the subject property is the basis. It is the basis. It is the standard. It is the sun around which all the planets revolve, all the comparables. All right. Now we are moving to 735. Which of the following statements is goddamn fucking lies? False. And the answer for 375 is 3. If a comparable which has vendor financing at below market rates is used in the comparative method of appraisal, the value of the below market financing will be added to the sales price of the comparable to determine the adjusted sales price. That's a fucking blatant lie. If a comparable has had VTB at below market rates, then if you use that in comparative method of appraisal, the value of the below market finances will be added to the sale price of the comparable to determine the adjusted sale price. No, that is not true. Okay, so that's the answer. Having said that, here are the true things. The principle on which the comparative method of appraisal rests is that the price paid for a commodity will be equal to the cost of acquiring a substitute in the same circumstances. 2. In the comparative method of appraisal, recent refers to the period immediately preceding the appraisal date during which values have remained stable. For if the adjusted sales price of 5 comparables are 10 grand, 90 grand, 95 grand, 100 grand, and 100 grand, the appraiser could estimate the market value of the subject property to be 100 grand. Guess so. And we are motoring right along. Right along. We are motoring. You're going to get 100%. You're going to get 100%. 768. 768. And the answer is number 4. Oh, what's the question? A 50-year-old house is arranged such that when the front door is open fully, it is possible for a person standing on the porch to look straight down the hallway into the main bathroom. This is an example of kinky porn filming in a house. No. Anyway, this was owned by a porn studio for many, many years. Okay, anyway, so you got the bathroom right at the end of the hallway, and you can see it right when you go through the front door. And you know what? This is an example of 768 for all of the above. Number 1, a design deficiency in today's market because our values have changed. 2, functional depreciation under the cost method of appraisal. And 3, a patent defect. So let's do it again. What, it's because of feng shui? You can't have a bathroom at the end of the hallway and looking down to the front door? But now people have changed. And they said, hey, that's a design deficiency in today's market. That's a functional depreciation under the cost method of appraisal. And that's a patent defect, you sons of whatevers. And we are going along to 803. In using the comparative method of appraisal, the appraiser estimates the value from the evidence afforded by the sales price of similar properties which have recently been sold. Which of the following best describes what is meant by similar? And the answer, drumroll please, is 803. Oh fuck, that's the question. It's 4. Similar with respect to those factors which are likely to have material influence on the behavior of buyers and sellers. All right? So when you're using the comparative method of appraisal, comparative, and you look at similar properties, similar means for factors that are likely to have a material influence on the behavior of buyers and sellers. 857, and I'm on page 25, by the way. Which of the following 2 statements are true? 2 identical houses in Amber Green, a neighborhood of Surrey, BC, may have different appraised values because, and the answer is 857, 2. Only B is true. B, one property faces north, the other south. So what? So if you face south, you're going to have a higher value, and you face north, you're going to have a lower value. Is that right? I don't know, man, but it's one property faces north, the other south, so that's why we've got the different appraised value, and B is true. Forget the other one. You got it? 26, 9, 10 is the question. The cost method of appraisal is only used on rare occasions to determine market value of residential properties. Which one of the following would be most correct as reasoning for the infrequency of use? Like, why the fuck? Some guy invented it and we don't even use it. And the answer is 4. The assumption that cost equals value is not necessarily correct. So that's why we don't use cost method, because the assumption that cost equals value is not necessarily correct. Don't believe it, that lie, bitches. And we're moving right along to the last question, and it's somewhere at the end. Woo! 950. Sophisticated investors will ultimately determine the value of undeveloped land by, number one, estimating the value of the land when improved and subtracting the costs of undertaking such a development. Wow. You've got the sophisticated investors. They will ultimately determine the value of undeveloped property by, number one, estimating the value of the land when it's improved. Okay, so they're thinking, what if we improved it? And then you subtract the costs of doing that development shit. You got my point? I hope so. Well, I'm finished. I'm going to have a party. I'm going to celebrate. And I'm getting 100% on this test. So fuck all you haters and doubters and mockers. Yeah. And have a good evening or day or whenever.